Hello everyone, Jessica here, and welcome back to another card process video. So I had the wonderful opportunity to create with the Good Day stamp set, and this stamp set has two very cute little characters. I love that little koala bear, and some great sentiments. You get a lot of choices with this one. But first I'm going to start on the background. So I wanted to do a ink blend background, and I'm using alcohol inks here. And I'm doing it in shades of red, orange, and yellow, and then adding some gold mixative at the very bottom. I have my ink blender, and I added a little bit of blending solution to that felt, and then started swiping that across the YUPO paper. It created a beautiful gradient background, and it helped from keeping the colors mixing too much. So I did cut this down to 3.5 inches by 4 3/4. I'm going to layer it onto a card base. The other thing I wanted to do was to do some alcohol ink painting. I have my alcohol ink palette, and I'm actually just going to be using the pitch black color for this. I have a synthetic paintbrush. It's a plastic bristle brush, so the alcohol inks won't harm it. And I'm dabbing off the bristles onto the glass media mat just so that I don't overload my paintbrush too much. Now this is straight ink. I'm not mixing any blending solution with this because I don't want the black ink to actually blend into the background. I want it to sit more on top. So I'm painting over that gradient background. And I'm just doing a really quick scene here. I wanted a sunset kind of scene, so I had painted a few small bushes, some hills, just something really easy. And then I created a tree in the background, and then I'm going to do a more larger tree on the left side there. You can tell when the ink starts to get a little dry because it's a little harder to work with, so I just add a couple more drops of that pitch black alcohol ink. Once I got to where I thought it looked pretty good, I am going to start stamping these two characters that I'm going to be using. I'm using some Copic friendly black ink, and this one is by Gina. There's several out there though that are really great for Copics. Since I already have my stamp platform out and all my stamping materials, I'm going to go ahead and stamp the sentiment. This is on a piece of green cardstock. I'm going to heat emboss it with white embossing powder. So I've already prepped my cardstock with my embossing buddy. That way the embossing powder doesn't stick everywhere. And then I'm using just the Versamark ink pad to get that embossing powder to stick. After I heat set it with my Wagner tool, I'm going to set that aside and start coloring. Now if you want to skip all the coloring, you can go ahead and skip to the time on the screen. I do try to make this as quick as possible. I do a lot of layering, so Copic Coloring does take me quite a long time. I wanted to color him in grays. It's pretty traditional, I think. But I like to combine my cool and my warm grays. I think it just looks really nice when you combine those two tones together. I also add a little bit of pink to his cheeks just to make his face stand out a little more, and then blend that out a lot with the C1 marker. I didn't want his cheeks to be too pink. So now I can actually start coloring my little gentleman guy here. I'm going to make him look pretty rugged, I think. And I do draw some weird little cheek marks there. That's actually going to be for a little later. I wanted to give him a 5 o'clock shadow, so I'm going to use those as my guidelines. I didn't really know what I wanted to do for his clothes. I knew that my background was pretty vivid, it's pretty bright. So I was kind of having a hard time with that. But I had already used that green cardstock because red and green are complementary colors. So I thought, why not make his clothes kind of a green gray color, almost army green, I think would be a better term for that. So I do add some shade with my E04 marker. I like to use that marker for specifically for shading, for shadows. I just think it looks nice and adds a certain depth to it. On this though, it does kind of get blended out a lot because I add so much color. I do go in with a light green and then start building the shadows up with the darker greens. I have a couple markers that are very gray saturated greens, so those work perfectly for this. I do basically the same thing with his pants, but I did start with some of the E markers. And then I can add in his little 5 o'clock shadow with a W3, and that just gives a little hint of stubble there. I thought it looked cute. He looks a little rugged. I went ahead and did a rough cut, and then I went ahead and fussy cut those out. I also trimmed off a lot of the cardstock around the sentiment. I'm going to start adhering some foam to certain elements of my card. So I cut a piece of black cardstock into a small strip, and I'm layering black foam behind that. I'm using liquid glue because I think it helps adhere the cardstock to the foam the best. And then I'm just placing that underneath that large acrylic block so it holds everything down and keeps it weighted, and it will dry nice and flat. The characters, I add some white foam behind them, then do the same thing with the acrylic block. While those are drying, I attach the sunset scene to a piece of black cardstock. It's just large enough to give a nice black border all the way around. And then I'm going to attach those two to a standard A2 size Neenah Solar White 110 pound cardstock. It's a top fold. I have these pre-cut and pre-scored, so they're easy to grab. And once everything's secured together, I'm going to start adding my characters and the words to this card. So I'm doing the same thing, just adding the liquid glue to the foam. I add the black strip first because I'm going to add the characters to the top of that. So I place that down, and by using the liquid glue, that actually gives me a little bit of time to really make sure that is straight. So you can kind of see me fussing around with it, kind of wiggling it around before the adhesive dries. And then I add my two characters. I like how the background kind of frames them, and they really do pop off that colorful background because they have that white border. And then I can add my sentiment strips with the same liquid glue and my tweezers. Those are always a big help when trying to adhere things. That is all done, and I'm just kind of waiting for it to dry a little more. I'm going to go ahead and stamp on the inside. I'm going to make this a happy birthday card. I'm going to use the happy birthday sentiment that came in the Good Day stamp set, and it's pretty large, so it does take up quite a bit of that space on the inside of the card. I'm stamping that with some bright red ink. This is Distress Oxide ink, and that'll help tie the front to the inside of the card. And then I also wanted to use the koala image one more time. He's just so cute, so I'm going to add him to the very top of the happy birthday words, right in the middle. Well, almost middle anyways. And I'm just going to stamp him with black ink and leave him be. I keep my inside of my cards pretty simple. I just like to tie in a few elements from the outside. So going back to the front, I added some glossy accents. I didn't want to do that before I finished the card from on the inside because I would smear it. So I'm adding some glossy accents to these two characters. Specifically on his hat, his eyes, he has a necklace and a belt buckle, and that'll help make those stand out a little bit more. This stamp does have quite a bit of detail, and I wanted to show those elements off. And for the koala bear, I just add some of that glossy accents to his eyes and his nose. And then as a last minute decision, I added some more texture to the little koala. I think he needed some more depth to him, so I just add some spots in the shadows to really enhance his look. And that is it from me. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm so excited to be a part of this team. I really appreciate you watching, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye! Meh, meh.